And welcome everybody to the Between Two Wheels podcast, doing another great combo episode with Rob Dalto of Tour Breakaway podcast. Welcome, Rob. We're going to do the 2021 Tour de France. You jacked up and ready to go?
I am. I mean, it's the Grand Boucoulis, what we've been waiting for.
Right, and see, that's why
it could be more exciting than this.
And that's why you're here. You give the little flair to the words. I just Grand Boucle. I don't know. But you do the proper pronunciations. You give the proper words, and we are ready to go. So, first of all, before we even go break down into this, what is kind of your just immediate takeaway of this Tour de France coming up, and what you're kind of excited to see?
Well, it's, parkour-wise, it's pretty standard, traditional Tour de France route. I do very much appreciate that we're going to have excitement from the jump. Usually, you're either going to get a prologue or a day for the sprinters. We don't have that. We've got 2 days for the punchers in Brittany. So it really sets up an interesting week one where just about anybody can wear the yellow jersey who usually wouldn't have an opportunity to do so. So that's really exciting. And then, again, we're going to finish with something to hold our breath with. Hopefully, probably not as dramatic as last year's Punch de Belfi time trial, but another decisive time trial in stage 20. So from the start and from the end, we'll have stuff to look at. Yeah, totally.
Mine is kind of similar where stage 2, I think that's the Mur de Bretagne, we got to get that right. That's going to, and we can look back at kind of history of either people were winning there and went on to win the Tour, or they were in yellow and then went on to win the Tour. So it's kind of a decisive little early on situation that we have. And then a 2-time going up Mont Ventoux, which to me, those are both exciting. So maybe we'll just throw up on screen first the actual route. Take a look here. Starts over in the far, far left corner. As you're looking at the map, the west side of France, goes across the middle, hits over on the mountains just north and hits the Alps there, comes on down, hits Mont Ventoux, like we said, the Pyrenees, and then straight up to Paris. So, we had kind of made a little mention of this when we were first talking here. Do you want to do the route first? Do you want to do the riders first?
We've got it up, so let's look at that route. I mean, Brittany, and so the one thing I've heard already is like the weather forecast is not good. Okay. So they're expecting a lot of rain for the first couple days. And for these guys that are going to be jockeying for position on the first two stages in particular, my understanding is that there's not the 3-kilometer rule in effect. So they're going to be jockeying for position straight to the finish, which could play a little bit of factor in how aggressively they go after the finale. So let's pull up the route. Let's go through it.
Okay. So maybe we'll do stages here. I could do it off of cycling tips. Pro Cycling Stats or let's go to the preview or Steep Hill. Maybe Steep Hill will just be a little quicker for this one here. Okay. So stage 1, Brest to Landerneau. Is that the proper pronunciation we got there?
I'm no good with French. I only say the words I know how to say. I skip the rest of them.
Okay. 197 kilometers with some lumps in there, some Cat 4s, 3s mixed in. So you're going to see some people probably break trying to get up the road there, either to establish some KOM points. But if not, we've got sprinters waiting in the wings. You think this has a kick up at the finish too? Anything notable about this stage?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to see a break because, like you said, King of the Mountain points on offer. And so long as they get to the sprint point, whoever's there first is going to wear the KOM, so long as they were able to be first to the line on the majority of those first 4 categorized climbs. But yeah, looking at that finale, 3 kilometers at 5.7. My understanding is the first 2 of that are the steeper of the 3 kilometers, but that's going to be too much for a sprinter. So, typically you'd look at something like this with a couple 4s and 3s and you say, yeah, they'll make it, but this is going to be a day for the punchers, and anybody who's really interested in wearing the yellow jersey in that first week is going to be having a go at it. And also the fact that they don't have a 3-kilometer rule in effect, even some of the GC guys are going to be messing around trying to get in the mix there.
Yeah, I totally believe that. And, look, it's going to be interesting to see. We could talk about some of the sprinters coming up. Actually, I'm going to use this other Pro Cycling Tips. I think they give a little bit better the profile, but you can see the last kicking there in the finishing profile. It does have a little bit of something. This might be more of and I don't think he's actually here, but the Sonny Cabrelli style sprinter, if it comes to a group, Greg Van Avermaet, those kind of Alaphilippe. I mean, he's going to be primed, obviously, for that. So, but yeah, you've got to kick up to the finish So it will be somewhat interesting there. So stage 2, this is the one that I'm kind of excited about. We've had some good history with. It's, what do we have here? 200. That's the meters here. I'm gonna have to look at. Do you know the distances?
180. Yeah, it's 183 kilometers, and like you said, it's got that steep kick at the finale. That 2 kilometers at 6.9%.
Yeah, it's got a middle section there that's the steepest section. But yeah, 6.8 or 6.9. Fun facts, I've got some on this. The longest Tour de France individual time trial went over the mirror the first time they did that in 1947, 139 kilometer time trial. So think about that, but pretty wicked. A few little nuggets here. So they went over 2011. Cadel Evans won it. He was real close to he ended up winning the GC that year. Alexis Villemous in 2015 over Dan Martin. And Froome was in yellow at that point. He ends up winning it overall. That was stage 8. So the other one was stage 4. So it's always coming in early. Dan Martin in 2018 wins this. Geraint Thomas goes into yellow, and he ends up holding on to yellow for the win there. And that's also when Tom Dumoulin had a little drafting incident, I believe, lost some time. So my point on that is just looking at this real simply. You're either in yellow or you win the stage and you go on to win. So it's somewhat been, at least before. Now this is, it's stages 2 to 8 or 4 to 8 or so. Now this is stage 2. We're probably not going to see that, but it was just an interesting little tidbit that you're close to it there.
That's a pretty great tidbit. And I mean, to that point, if you want to play it up, I mean, with this level of incline, this is going to be punchers. And I think some of the GC guys, this is something that Roglic could definitely win. So, who knows? Maybe we see him in yellow as early as stage 2, very potentially, and that would be quite interesting. It's also mind-boggling. You said 149 kilometer time trial. I just heard a stat yesterday on another show. The longest stage in Tour de France history, 482 kilometers.
Yeah, those are back in the day, right?
1919.
Yeah.
And, they're basically riding square tires, square wheels back then. So it's scary.
That's what's even more frightening about it is the technology that they had. And then how many days did it take them to do that stage? That's the question.
They did it in one day. I think they said it was 19. No, I don't want to misquote it. It took a long time. Yeah. But they did get it done in one day.
All right. Well, that's good for them. Okay. Stage 3, Lorient to Pontivy. 182.9 kilometers, a little more punchy, but not as punchy as the first 2 days. So maybe a sprinter day.
Yeah, definitely sprinter day. 3 and 4, they're sending it back to the sprinters. And look for the fast guys on this one because you got a flat run in after that downhill. Everyone's going to be looking at Caleb Ewan. I'd have to guess that he'd be the odds favorite for stage 3 and probably for stage 4 as well before the time trial. And
we'll jump to stage 4 right away. Very much flat. No cat 4s or 3s or any of them on there, just a sprint spot in the middle. I don't know if there's bonus seconds at all on offer do you know if they're doing bonus seconds for sprints and or finishes?
Good question. I know there are bonus seconds throughout the course, but I don't believe they're on every stage. Good question. I don't think they are available on this stage.
All right. Then we go to stage 5. So look, you're going to have some GC shakeups. Like we said, stage 1 and 2 could definitely do that. Stage 5, we get an individual time trial. Definitely going to obviously, bring the GC guys out. And you're going to even see that filtered more. But this time trial doesn't look too, I don't know, technical wise, it's a horseshoe, looks like. Almost meets up there for a full, really sloppy circle. But as far as elevation goes, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, very flat. This is a high-powered time trial to 27 kilometers. You got about a dozen turns that you need to bother with. So yeah, the big time trial guns are going to be out on this one. The Stefan Kungs of the world, Biesiger should be in play,
right?
And then of course the silver medalist Wout van Aert. So it'd be interesting if Wout's in contention or even just holding his guys close to the front. You could definitely see somebody like Wout van Aert pull on the yellow jersey after a stage like this.
Right. So I don't want to get into too much about strategy as far as, because we'll maybe go over that with the teams, but that's a great point because we don't know what that team is really going to be focusing on. Do you actually let Wout do that, or do you just make sure that this time, everyone is really focused on Roglic?
Totally.
Okay. Stage 6, we're moving along here. Tours to Châteauroux, 160.4 kilometers. Not a long stage either, and ran around 100 miles. And once again, not really any climbs.
Another sprint stage, definitely. And I believe this is the one I heard somebody mention might be where Mark Cavendish had his first career win at the Tour de France.
Yeah. Just
how about that?
A good call. And also just putting it into perspective around time trials, you want to know, what are teams going to do? The day before, we said it was somewhat flat. Well, you're definitely going to have GC riders wanting to sit in, right? So how does that play in? Are the sprinters teams going to make sure that they pull on through that? But time trials, right around a day or so before or after, or before we head into the mountains, those always play a part as to what their thinking is. Okay, stage 7, we're getting Vierzon to La Croissant, 250 kilometers, 49.1 actually, with some hills. So stage 7, we already got a time trial. We've already got some lumps and bumps in Mur de Bretagne. Now it looks like some legit-ish climbs, probably just enough to knock out the climbers, though. I mean, the sprinters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, sprinters aren't going to survive this one. You've got some steep bits within there, particularly that last Cat 2 climb. People's legs are going to be pretty spent by the time they get there. My only fear is a breakaway gets too far up the road to reel back in, because this would be a real exciting finish for a lot of the punchers that are going to be gunning for it. So while it might not overall be decisive in the race, this could be just a real fun one to watch. Just the attacks going over those last couple ramps.
Right. So you can see there is a Cat 2, or a 3, a 2, and it ends on a 4, but it doesn't end on a 4. The 4 comes, a little bit before the finish, and then we'll see what happens there. So obviously setting up for a great finish there.
And by the way, 249 kilometers.
Right.
I mean, that is just going to absolutely kill the legs. So definitely no sprinter surviving that one. And I'd expect some attacks. Yeah, we'll get into tactics later, but for some of those punchers who might be gunning for that yellow jersey in the first week, they could be making moves here either to protect it or maybe steal it back before they ultimately lose it. When we look ahead to stage 9.
Definitely. Stage 8, Oyonnax to La Grande Bernard, 150. So they went 250, and now they go back to 150. But we've got a little bit of climbing going on here, starting to get towards the Alps as well.
Yep, and what's interesting here is it's easing into the mountains. No Oars category climbs yet, and the descent finish, which is going to be interesting because we'll see that twice here. So some of the guys that might typically be attacking as the key mountaintop winners, but don't have the descending legs, will be interesting to see how they play it versus some of the guys that are known for their descending skills. If they just say, "I'm going to send it, see if I could get a gap and run it into the finish and turn 10 seconds into a minute."
Right, and it looks like it's about 20K or so there to the finish you've got on the downhill, but it's a jagged downhill, so it's not just quite the smooth one. Up the De La Colombière, Cat 1, 7.5, 8.4% at 7.5 kilometers. That could definitely break things up, and once again, you're going to be sprinting or racing and attacking to the top of the climb, and then the descending, which we've seen, cause havoc for many riders going downhill.
Yeah, and this stage is definitely harder than it looks, because if you look at the penultimate climb, you've got 8.8 kilometers at 8.9%.
Right.
That's some really steep stuff, and then it's a short downhill. It's basically kind of like almost like a plateau before you ascend again to the Colombier. So there's going to be gaps for sure.
Right.
At that level of incline, the greater than 8%, you're really looking at true climbers to be able to stay with the selection.
Right. Okay, let's go to stage 9, and this is, let me see, stage 9 is this Sunday, so before the rest day, and they like to have the weekend show off something, and here we're going to show off some Cat 2s and HC in the middle and a Cat 1 finish from, what is it, Cluses to Teens? I don't know, that's how I pronounce it.
Yeah, and the thing that's remarkable about this one, so you've got the Col de Prix, the uncategorized, Oars category climb, but then you're effectively climbing from 112 to 144 kilometers. So you've got 32 kilometers of climbing. They only categorize that last 21 at 5.6, but it's really 32 kilometers of climbing. So if that ends up being a hot, sunny day, nutrition is going to be important, and you could just see guys cracking, even though it's not that steep of a climb, just because of the sheer duration of it all. Right,
and the finishing climb, is rated at 20 kilometers, 20.8, And if you can see the profile there, it's got some red, some blue, some green, some black, which is changes of the percentage of the gradient, which is just not always conducive for a motor, right? This is maybe more of a climber guy that likes to pitch and roll and really make the changes of pace. So it could be an interesting day.
Totally. Yep.
All right, then we have a rest day. And coming out of the rest day, we're out in the Alps there. We start out in Albertville. I think that's where they had the Olympics one year. Albertville to Valence, 190.7 kilometers, a Cat 4 sprint. And, coming out of the rest day, once again, we don't necessarily know that could have different effects on people. This doesn't look like it might be one of the roughest coming out of the rest day, so probably not too detrimental.
Yeah, we've seen more carnage out of a rest day. Everyone should be able to stay packed in here and get through just fine.
Yeah. So that one, we're heading down, getting to stage 11. Soirjean to Malanseine. I don't know. That's I'm sure slaughter on that one. And this one is, to me, the most exciting one because they end up going up Mont Ventoux twice. And you can see they kind of come from the west side and up, and then they come up the spine, they do a loop around the end, and then come up the other side. So they hit the chalet both times in the main part. So you're going to have the top section of Mont Ventoux hit twice, from the chalet on up, at least twice. Brutal.
Yeah. And how do you feel about the descent finish on the Ventoux stage? And then having to call it a finale in, whatever this town is that neither of us can pronounce, versus actually having a proper Ventoux summit finish?
I don't know what the point of that is necessarily. And I know they've had different non-Tour de France races go off the back. Now, they did have, I'm trying to remember the year it was, but it was Miguel Indurain ended up winning. This guy, Eros Pauli, he was like the tallest guy in the field. He comes to the bottom of Mont Ventoux solo with like 27 minutes. He crushed the top with about 2 minutes, I think, and ended up going in for the win. But they were real concerned about going over the backside and that descent, twisty descent and kind of technical for Indurain. But he ended up keeping it upright. That was like the only way that you can hope that he loses in those areas. But I'm not super excited about the way it is. It's always great to have that finish on the top with the barren hill up there. I'm not sure why they're doing this. Maybe that town really paid a bunch of money. I don't know.
Actually, that's probably a darn good reason, because I share that sentiment. I mean, it's such an iconic climb. There's other mountains that are less iconic to do the descent finish if you wanted to, and it's always epic to say when somebody they won on Ventoux, and if you win on Ventoux in yellow to boot, you're probably going to win the Tour.
Right.
And now it's like, oh, I won the stage that features Ventoux. I don't know. It just doesn't do the iconic day justice.
No, but you're going to have to tune in early to make sure you're getting both Ventoux climbs. And then imagine being a spectator up there. You actually get to see them once. And it seems exciting, but I think all you're going to see the first time going up is attrition. And then you're going to see a race the second time, right? Yeah. Think of it like, the Tourmalet before Les Ardennes or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be absolute carnage. And this is another one, 199 kilometers.
Right.
So not only are you doing Ventoux twice, which is bad enough, but it's basically 200 kilometers to do it.
Right. You could see
big gaps.
You could see some sprinters jettisoned maybe, and only 11 stages in. I mean, almost halfway.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oof, brutal. But I'm excited for that one. So that's what we have. Stage 12, St. Paul Trois Chateaux to Nîmes. 159.4. So they go from almost 200 down to 100 miles here. The day after Ventoux, it doesn't look all that sprite of climbing. I mean, it's got some jags there, but it only one Cat 3 climb.
Yeah, should be another day for the sprinters. Positioning's everything. Going to be about how well the teams assemble there, just to keep their guys in the right position. But should be for the sprinters. Right,
and this is a little bit more of a transition day out of the Alps to the Central Massif to going into the Pyrenees. And I'm not sure if this is one of those areas that is just kind of really sticky roads. I mean, you look at the actual topography map here, and they just stick in the high stuff. They don't decide to kind of go in the valleys. They're kind of going where the little more climbs are. So it's going to be a pitchy day. Not fun, I imagine.
Yeah, they should be protected. I do know they want to get more of the crosswinds in. It's just something that actually disrupts the race, and it ends up making the team tactics more important because you see the weaker teams get caught out. And last year, you look at who made the stage where we saw the huge gaps from the crosswinds. You saw the weaker teams, UAE, Tadej Pogacar. We saw Bahrain and Mikel Landa. They were amongst the ones that got caught out a minute and a half back because they were, didn't have a strong team to keep them up front. And that's going to, the more that they can incorporate stages with the crosswinds, doesn't look like that'll be one, but the more they can do that, the more they can kind of inject some adversity to the race, because for a lot of these mountain stages, the separations are like seconds, 10 or 15 seconds here to maybe 20 seconds, but the crosswind stage, you could lose a minute, 2 minutes.
Well, I know how they could really do. You look back at, like I said, the 1947, the guy that won the time trial, he beat the next guy by 4.5 minutes, and third place was almost 7. So if you want to put some gaps in there, do time trials over 30 kilometers. Okay, Nîmes to Carcassonne, 220 kilometers, basically 219.9. Or did we just talk about this? I don't think we did yet. Getting down on the coast a little bit.
Yep. If you're on 13, that's a different stage. You see we're hugging the coast a little bit more. And should be a one for the sprinters. It looks like there's a little ramp finish, but I wouldn't put it past any of the sprinters. I mean, look at what folks like Caleb Ewan do on Hatta Dam and places like that. They should be able to get the job done there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. But it'll be interesting to see who's left at that point. Then they at least have some, looks like no transfers, same start and stop city, Carcassonne to Quillon, 183.7, at least from stage 13 to 14. They're doing a few stages here where they go into a city, they finish, they start the next day in the same village, I guess you would call it here. But starting to get into some climby stuff here. 183.7 kilometers, moving northward, it looks like, or are they coming down through? Oh no, they head a little bit south and starting to hit the Pyrenees. A Cat 3, a 2, a 3, a 3, and a 2.
Puncher City. I mean, anybody who's out for King of the Mountains jersey might want to get in a break here, pick up some points. Probably going to be a big break, and they might take the day actually. But yeah, these are fun ones to watch because if it comes back together, somebody's going to attack over that final Cat 2 climb and try to run it into the finish. You still have a decent bit, 17 kilometers, but most of it on a decent descent. So a puncher looking to get a gap there can definitely do it.
Right. And this is a Saturday. So we also think about Saturday, you go to Sunday, and with Sunday, the next day is a rest day. So how are people prepping up for, going into this, and then what comes out of that once again? So 14, and then we get the Saturday. Are we going to see a big mountain day for the Saturday? Nah, not too bad. Yeah. It's got some Cat 1s, a 2, 2 more 1s, and a downhill finish.
Yeah, I think this is and this is when we crossed into Andorra. I think this one's going to actually be a bit of I wouldn't want to be out there this day. So you kind of hit that first valley at 35 kilometers, and then you could go over that Font Romeu at 94. That's a 60 kilometer ascent. Now they're only categorizing that Mont Louis at 8.4 at 5.7, but that's a long drag uphill. Yeah. And then when you ascend, we kind of see again like what we had seen. Was it stage 8 or 9, where it was like you're kind of going up that Cat 2, then a very short descent before you have to then go up the Cat 1 to Envalira. And that is the highest point of the race. You're at 24:08. So I think this is going to be a deceptively hard day out there, and up in the steep hills there of Andorra.
Yeah, and I could see that you can have, like what you said, that's Cat 2, there's a little pitch, and then it keeps going up, and then the Henri de Grand, which is the highest point in the race. And I could see this where you've got Ineos or Jumbo or one of these teams grinding it away, especially when you start to get into high altitude and you just have people, pitching off the back rather than much action going up front. However, once again, we said this is the Saturday or the Sunday. So you have the rest day the next day. Some people are more willing to take a bigger bite of the apple, so to speak.
Absolutely.
All right. So we got a rest day. We come out flying out of stage 16 now. El Pas de la Casa to Saint-Garon. Come on, people. 169 kilometers. They need the French to English pronunciations here. And once again, you have the rest day, And then you have some high mountains in the middle, but it doesn't look all that devastating with a 2 and a 4, but maybe I'm just full of it because it is a lot up and down.
Look, it's not as friendly as stage 10 after the first rest day, but it certainly could be more brutish. Look, if somebody's legs fall out from under them on a day like this, it's a really bad sign, and we see that sometimes, particularly on the second rest day.
Right.
So all we can do is sit and watch on this one.
Right. And I think, like I always say, one leads to the next, and you don't have to look days ahead, even though maybe as fast and furious you live your life a quarter mile at a time. But the next day have some big HC category climbs, and it's going to be a leg breaker. So stage 17, Muret to Saint-Lary-sur-Loing, the Col de Portet, 178.4 kilometers, straight into it with a sprint, a Cat 1 and 1, and an HC. So they backload this one.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this is the Queen stage and where you should see the biggest gaps. I mean, and it just reminded me now, thinking back to what we just looked at 16 in terms of who may make a move. Guys who lost times and are out hunting stages, they're going to want to go on 16 knowing that the GC guys, to your point, are going to want to be saving for 17 and 18. So we'll probably see some of those top 10 hopefuls that lost it having their go back at 16. But yeah, I mean, look at this. The Col de Portet, 16 kilometers at 8.7 after
right.
2 Cat 1s. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Yeah, that is just going to be absolutely hell. And I think this should be the Queen stage. This should be where we're going to see some really interesting tactics, particularly between those teams that have multiple options and those that don't, like UAE and Jumbo. So this is where a lot of guys are going to let it all hang out.
Yeah, and the Col de Périssord, the Col de Val-Laurent, and also, like I said, the Portet. Some nasty climbing going on there. And that is, what are we at, stage 17? So
and just imagine that lead in. So like looking at guys that are going to have to control for their teams, like Luke Rowe for Ineos and Tony Martin. Right. And if Julian Alaphilippe's still going for it, they're going to have de Klerk up front. They have to pull like 113 kilometers to the sprint point to probably keep the breakaway in check before they start hitting these climbs. Those guys are going to be very, very tired.
Right.
Come the top of the Col de Portet, so hopefully they got a cold one ready for them.
Or you hope that BMB, Total Direct Energy, and some of these others collaborate to kind of get up the road and take the pressure off. So you just, hey, get up there and do your thing. However, stage 18, this might be the Queen for me because you have the Tourmalet and then the Luz Ardiden. So two very iconic climbs out there in the Pyrenees, an HC and an HC. 129 kilometers, so maybe one of the shorter stages you've had for the mountains, but with the two HCs that they have, the Tourmalet to really soften you up, and then just the legendary Luz Ardiden getting close to the finish as well. It's kind of last chance saloon for some of these climbers.
Yeah, and I'm curious if you could zoom in on the course map a little bit. This is one of the longer descents. So like what we saw in a lot of these other mountains is we've got an ascent, but then it's a short descent before the next descent. And this is one of the longest. You've got 94 to 104. So you've got basically a 20. I mean, if you include the flat, you've got over a 20 kilometer descent before you have to do that final climb to the Luz Ardiden. Is it a relatively straightforward descent, or is it technical with zigzags?
From the Tourmalet to the Luz Ardiden?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty straightforward. Okay. From my recollection of just at least watching it. I mean, it's none of them are that straightforward, but this doesn't seem to be too. I mean, I'm trying to look at the best I can there, but I don't remember too. Look, the Luz Ardiden has some storied wrecks itself, not the descent, but Lance Armstrong and Ivan Mayo getting caught up in the bag there. That was famously done. So maybe they need to worry a little bit more about the uphill than the downhill, but. Yeah. Once again, so Luz Ardiden has played some great roles in this. Greg LeMond and Bernard Hinault in the 85 Tour, where LeMond was way up the road, and they told him, hey, wait for Bernard Hinault. And so he did, thinking that they was just 30 seconds behind. He was minutes back. It ruins his chances there. He does end up kind of regaining himself a Luz Ardiden, I think it was in 90, with Miguel Indurain. It was one of the first times we really saw him come to the fore. Greg ends up second. But he overtook Claudio Chiappucci there. One of my favorite stages ever is the 87 Tour de France. D'Agata Laurenson, a 7-11. He gets up the road with Davis Finney. Davis gets spit out, but D'Agata Laurenson ends up winning on the day. Fabio Lucha Herrera, I think, came in there, but Andy Hampston, I think it was third on the day, did a great showing. Of course, bonked out later on Ventoux, but it was one of the great stages for me to watch. So I grew up watching that one over and over. Just a little Lizarded in history.
Well, we know where you'll be on July, what would that be, 15th then?
Yeah. I'll be watching it there. Okay, so getting near the end, though. Maron to Lebrun, 270 kilometers, and everyone's like, hey, climbers are done. We're going into let the sprinters take over, if there's any left over.
Exactly.
Yeah, not much to see there as a Cat 4 early on.
And look at it, just straight line north-south.
Yeah.
That's it.
This is kind of one of the, you asked about the going around Ventoux and down and around and how they decide. This is one of those, like, we're just kind of tired at this point, even of putting on the course. We're just going to go straight up the road.
Yeah.
Okay, prepping up for the final time trial. Now, you said, is this the one that you were thinking is going to be a little bit more decisive like last year? I mean, it's obviously not.
Well, it should be
the Planche de Belfi.
Overall less decisive than last year. It's 30 kilometers. I think Planche de Belfi was 36 or 38. And you had, the Planche de Belfi itself, the part that they summited was a Cat 2 climb. This is very straightforward. It's pancake flat like you see here. You've got about 10 turns. So like when you compare it against the stage 5, you've got less turns. I think you've got a total of 10 turns you even need to pay attention to. And then that last straight, you've got like 5+ kilometers straight line running into the finish for the Tour de France. So we're going to see some guys whose tongues are just on the floor trying to save every second they can run into that finish. And I kind of like that. That's just raw power. What can you lay down on the bike? You're never going to have to get off the handlebars for the last 5 or 8 minutes. It's going to be pretty epic.
What'll be interesting at maybe which year did Tom Dumoulin win the Giro when he was second or third and he was chasing down Nairo? And I mean, a similar time trial flat, and you can see the comparison. He did it. I'm wondering if you're going to see, some of the big diesels having been put out of sorts on some of these climbs that we're obviously taking a look at. And, this is their last chance that they could really do something. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think for that one, there's a couple of the GC favorites who are really good at time trials who, depending what the gaps are, can feel relatively secure about their positions, at least a little bit more secure than last year, the Pogacar-Roglic
right.
situation. But if it's one of the weaker time trialist guys, like if we see like Superman Lopez up there or even Richie Carapaz isn't that strong at the time trial, some of these guys are going to be sitting ducks for guys who really want to be on the podium and have that strong TT. And I mean, last year we saw Superman, he was third, after he had that epic win on Col de la Loche, the biggest, really the queen stage of that race. He was sitting third, ready to lock up his third podium, one in each Grand Tour, and then got thrown all the way back to 6th place on the Planche de Belfi. And, you would think, for a climber, that would be a time trial he could handle, and he got absolutely spat out. So, if you're one of those weaker time trial guys on stage 20 this year, knowing what happened last year, they're going to be a little bit nervous.
Right. And then you just have the fact that it's after 3 weeks and, it's just a little bit different. I saw this, it was during the Giro and I was watching Wiggins talk about the time trials, and he's talking about these GC guys as the final time trial sitting really on the nose of their saddle. And his point was they have not been, and as someone who does time trials every once in a while, and you did triathlons, you could probably understand this. Sometimes you get really on that nose and you're just not comfortable and you're sliding around a lot. And he's like pointing it out. And he's like, the reason is they're not used to being in that position and elongating their legs. So this is a time trial technique position of just, muscle memory in a sense. And, the riders that you can see overcoming some of these little issues that may really have a big effect could obviously be a big deal in the final time trial. So how'd you like the Giro, by the way?
Look, Egan Bernal, he brought it back and he got it done. And now, going into that race, he was like super emotional. And I kind of had the sense of like, he's emotional because he's ready to like make his vengeance on the world tour scene, and was just delighted that he got it done. It was like you kind of had this little nervousness in the back of your mind the whole time, especially when he won that stage. Was it Campo Felice, the one where they went up into the gravel and he was just stomping on the pedals.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is so violent. It makes me nervous. I hope you're good. But then, the Montalcino stage, he came through, and to see him win was really exciting. And now that he got blessed by the Pope, I think they should just put him in the Tour de France because he'll never lose again after you get like blessed by the Pope. It's like nothing can ever go wrong again. So yeah, I was happy with that. And then the quick step drama was like second to none. So that's really fun if you want to spend time on that between Remco and what's his name? João Almeida, yeah, when he got called back to support Remco and, ended up losing 2 minutes there, that would have made a big difference for him when he, ended up really being one of the best climbers in the last week. And those couple seconds would have had him darn close to the podium.
Well, and we'll finish this off, but I just thought since you're here, it's great to talk to you about this. My analysis on that is that their Quick Step's problem was at all given a shared team leadership. What are you doing? I know you love Remco, great, but you had a guy that had been in the pink jersey forever last year. He's been doing pretty well, and then you have a guy who hasn't raced since he went over the bridge. I don't know what you're doing, putting even equal, at all. I mean, so to me that was just a fundamental flaw, but it's the fever. So.
Yeah, there's some Belgian bias there for sure. But then the thing I wondered. So João Almeida lost 4.5 minutes on the first climbing day. I think it was stage 3.
Right.
Like, what was the conversation on the team bus? Like, for him to lose 4.5 minutes that day, it seemed obvious. It made sense to a bystander say, "Oh, he lost 4.5 minutes. This guy just doesn't have the legs. Something's going on." But he turned out to be good. So, did he have like a bad stomach? Was there something like acute about that day that he didn't properly communicate to say like, hey, actually I am really good and like, let's like, don't make this decision prematurely? Or was he just quiet? I just don't know. I'm really interested to know like how those conversations went and how he was feeling when he lost 4.5 minutes. Because it is a very dramatic amount of time to lose on an opening climb of a Grand Tour.
Totally. With you on that one, which does then say, to them justify their reasons for switching over. But even before the gravel, the Strada Bianca type day, he had kind of reassessed or reestablished himself in the climbing. So anyway, well,
totally.
Speaking of climbing, you got the biggest climbing day of all, Paris, Champs-Élysées, 108.4 kilometers. One of my least favorite days of racing. I try not to tune in until they hit the Champs, and then I will at least watch that. I hate all the pomp and circumstance of the wine glasses and all this stuff. And so anyway, what do you think of this? I actually enjoy when they have a time trial like on the Giro the last day.
Yeah. Look, I got to say, I feel a little bit the opposite. I mean, it's fun watching the guys. Look, when Egan Bernal was drinking the champagne in 2019, I was like, he slugged it down. I was like, this guy might be drunk. Like, you better check this guy. He's not a very big guy drinking that champagne, a full glass. So yeah, look, the thing is, exactly what's going to happen. Like, there's people are going to attack with a couple laps to go, and it's all going to come back together, and it's going to be a bunch sprint. But the reality is, for these guys, there's nothing bigger in the sport than winning that sprint. And look, if Cavendish makes it that far, this is going to be one of the most tuned into stages of the Tour de France in a long time. The thought of him winning there will just have cycling fans of the last couple of generations totally dialed in to see.
Right. No, I agree with that. One thing I do love about the last day there is, and you'd think they would learn from this, which is they seem to have an area right next to the sprint, and they have a motorbike, and they have the camera. So it's a camera on the bike that goes with the pace of the sprint, and it's one of the best sprint finishes you can have. Now, I don't know, you always have crowds everywhere, but it seems like they could run something like they do at the dog tracks or something, that's along the line with the bunny rabbit.
Like track and field.
Yeah. And it would be a great way to finish that the sprinting all the time. But anyway, so I do like that about that finish.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate you acknowledging that. Let's go to, I don't know if you could see this well enough, but the teams themselves, I thought we'd walk through, because the way I like the steep hill one is they have a bunch, it's just the way that I don't know if it's alphabetical or what, but the lower class teams first, and we will just break through each one of these. If you have anything to say about any of these teams, we'll start with Total Direct Energy. Anybody on that team? Bosenhagen, I know that he used to be, quite the kind of punchy sprinter. I haven't really seen much of him since he left Quebec. Other than that, they have Pierre Latour, Turgis. They're just going to be a team for the breaks, I imagine.
Yeah, they're definitely gonna be a team for the breaks. I don't see anything too exciting there. The one guy that is kind of on the up and up is actually Anthony Turgis. He was second at Kurne Brussels Kurne, right. 8th at Flanders, 9th at Ghent Wevelgem, 10th at Milan San Remo. So he had a really good spring campaign. It's quiet because he's only on the podium once at Kurne Brussels Kurne, but those are pretty good results for a direct energy team. So early stages, we got those like basically Brittany style classics. I could see him having a go there. He's probably going to be out muscled, but definitely a guy that if he's in a break that goes pretty far into a stage, one of those bumpy ones, he could be there. He could be in the mix.
Right. Team Arkea Samsic. Obviously we know about Nairo, but Bahani's in there. Connor Swift, Warren Barguil, Daniel McClay, I think he can sprint okay as well. But Nasser Bahani coming to the tour.
Yeah, he's back. It'd be interesting to see what he does. Honestly, I'd love to see him win a stage just because then you get all the social media uproar and, everyone will remember how much they hate him or don't hate him or,
right.
or how fairly or unfairly he was treated. I remember when Gianni Moscon won a stage last month, I put up a post on the Instagram. I usually put up a post to World Tour stages. No comments. Like it got the least likes of anything because people just hate the guy.
Right.
And when with the Buhani incident, there was a lot more chatter, and I'd have to pull up the stats. A lot of people thought he deserved to be suspended for more than 3 months. I think that was the majority of votes that came in. Ended up being less than that. It ended up being a kind of a sympathy movement towards him with the threats that he was getting, which are of course unfair. But yeah, I'd like to see him win one. I don't know if he will. I don't think he's got the train for it, but I'd love to see him in the mix just from that regard.
Right. I don't think he doesn't have the train, and I don't think he surfs wheels as well as like a Cadel Evans. So he's just not, and doesn't have quite the punch. Literally as he used to, but
he might have the punch. But the last thing on them. So Nairo, I just saw this came out today. Nairo declaring that he's going to go for stages. Did you see that? He's not going to contend for GC.
No, but that's about the wisest thing he's said in a while. So that's good.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Because he has not been, you've watched him in Paris-Nice and some of these others. He's just not, he gets dumped a little too early. He's kind of there and he's, top 15-ish. And is that what they want? No.
Yeah, he's going to get beat up in this tour if he went for GC. And I wasn't bullish on him coming to the season. He had double knee surgery in the offseason. He was off the bike for 3 months. And sure, he's been on the bike long enough that he's got an okay baseline, but he doesn't have what it takes this season to be in the top 10. And I agree. I'd love to see him get out in a break late and take a stage. That would be a win for him.
Right. Intermarché, Wanty, Gobert, Marello, whatever it is. Two Van Poppels in the mix there. Louis Mentis, which used to have some, can you see that good enough or do you want?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah,
okay.
I can see it.
Louis Mentis, who used to be, kind of a little up and comer there. I haven't really seen that he's taken on what we could think. Jan Bakelands, what do you think of them? Probably once again, just they might go for a top, 15 with Louis.
Yeah, since he contended for the white jersey, he just hasn't had it. They might. I think Intermarché is going to be looking for camera time, and they're going to get some, but it ain't going to be at the finish of a stage.
Right, and the Van Poppels, they sprint okay, but not quite like one of their dads or the uncle for the other one. So, speaking of, Brian Cockard coming in with B&B Hotels. Who else do they have? Chevrolet, Pierre Roland. This is a stage hunter. This is nothing more than that.
Yeah, look, Brian Cockard, he's consistently in the mix for them at least.
Yeah.
Which is, more than you can say for some of the other teams. So I'd expect him to be there. He's probably not going to do much better than like a stage podium finish, but he's there in the mix.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I tend to think of him somewhat like a Sonny Colbrelli who can get over some of these climbs and be maybe one of the better sprinters in a smaller group. But I haven't really seen much of him in the last few years. So,
yeah, totally. And I think Quentin Parche, didn't he get I thought he might have snuck a win in early in the season in an off.
Sounds familiar.
Wasn't a pro, but in a smaller race. Either way, yeah.
And then
keep moving.
Alpecin Phoenix. They have three there that I'm very interested in. Obviously, Matthew van der Poel, Jasper Philipsen, and Tim Miller or Merlier. I don't know what you want to say it. What do you think of them and their prospects, and specifically van der Poel?
Yeah, well, van der Poel, look, he's out for glory on week one. He wants to put on the yellow jersey. He's making it his mission. He's been a little bit under the weather, apparently, and he didn't finish super well in his national title for the Netherlands. But look, you can't bet against this guy. He's going to absolutely be doing everything he can for the first two stages. I think his best shot is on stage one with the slightly lesser gradient ramp. We got, 3 kilometers at 5.7, and the last kilometer not so bad. So the other guys are going to want to be going in there real hot to try to drop him. Otherwise, the last K, he can absolutely light that up. And he'll be on a bid for a jersey there. And then, I'll pause there unless you got, in case you have a reaction on van der Poel.
Well, I just think I know I think he's targeting the Olympics. So I don't know how that's, but I think he's also a guy that comes in and can't help but try to compete. So even if he's targeting the Olympics, I don't think he's going to throw away a chance at the Tour if he can have something there. So it will be interesting to see his first foray into that. And Tim Merlier or even Philipsen, they've won some races this year, especially Tim. I don't know how, he didn't do the whole Giro. It came out of that early. So it'll be interesting to see how they stack up early on as some of those sprints. That's all I have.
Yeah, and they'll be great. And it's a good combo. I'm curious if in their team they run into any trouble or confusion with who to pick on the day, because they're both darn good sprinters. Right. And like Merlier, he won a stage for them at the Giro, first sprint day. Yeah. That's just absolutely incredible. And then on the flip side, you've got Philipsen. He won Scheldeprijs. He took two stages at the Tour of Turkey. Won the points classification there. So it's who do you back? Do you kind of go on the day? I think Trek Sigufrado kind of runs into these debates every now and again as well. But they're absolutely going to feature. Aside from Matthew van der Poel, I think between those other two guys, they're good for a stage win between them at some point as well. So for the first year in the World Tour, Alpecin Phoenix is definitely put on a good show so far. And we have a lot more to look forward to as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've enjoyed them. Now we go to the big team. So UAE Team Emirates, defending champ, obviously on that team. We'll rattle off them real quick here. Rui Costa, Rafa Majka, Brandon McNulty, Mark Hirschi, Davide Formolo, Mikkel Berg, Tadej Pogacar, and Vegard Stake Langen. And that's the only one I didn't recognize too much from Norway. He sounds like might be a big motor, but looks like a pretty solid team there to be backing Tadej.
Yeah, and love seeing McNulty on there. Right. Absolutely deserves a spot for UAE. He's riding super well, super strong, and love to see that. This is my take. UAE Emirates, you've got the reigning Tour de France champion, and your biggest risk is getting exposed and beaten by stronger teams in the mountains. This team is definitely better than they were last year, but it's still not a Jumbo-Visma, and it's certainly not an Ineos. Right. And so in a lot of ways, it's the biggest risk to Tadej Pogacar is still his teams leaving him exposed, especially when we get to Ineos, so we've got multiple options. At least with against Jumbo-Visma, they're all in for ROG, so it's there's only so much they could do against you. But when you look at an Ineos, they can throw a lot at you if you're exposed. And Rafał Majka, he's good. That's his super domestique. I think that's meant to be a super domestique. He's not what he used to be. He's solid, but there are going to be moments in this race where Tadej is going to be exposed.
Yeah, Rafa's won, I think, the King of the Mountains jersey there when he was with the Russian oligarch team. What was that? I forget what but Rui Costa is not what he used to be as a former world champion. But I think, and Hirschi's somewhat of a question mark so far this year from what he was last year. And we'll get to DSM about his former team, about how they just don't look at anything like what last year was. But, Formolo, he was kind of a washout earlier. But McNulty, I think he's got better support this year than last year. But last year he had Team Jumbo-Visma for that support. So I think he's probably looking pretty good. Any predictions?
Yeah, and there was
Go ahead.
Predictions on what?
Go ahead. We'll do that later.
Okay. And the one thing that's kind of working against UAE, just from kind of a team mojo perspective, I don't know if you caught the Tour of the Basque Country when McNulty was in the leader's jersey going to the final day, and they got separated, and they had Hershey up the road, and McNulty, it was a very mountainous day, very hilly day. McNulty cracked, Tade was exposed. Hershey tried to drop back and bring it back, and it was just like it was a total flub. It was a very poorly executed day by UAE. It was a master class, and to make it worse, it was a master class by Jumbo-Visma with Vingegaard and Roglic, and they ended up jumping up the podium for the win and putting Vingegaard on the podium. So they haven't, even with what they've got, it's good, it's not great, but they haven't shown very well together. Yeah. So you just got to hope that they can put it all together during the race.
Right. Well, some teams can take a situation like that and learn from them. And it didn't seem to me that they came out of that pointing fingers. So that's at least a help.
No, they didn't. No, not at all. Not at all, which is good. Yeah.
Okay. Trek Sigufrado, a team that, as you mentioned, doesn't always know what they're doing. And this tour, I can't imagine that Nibali is their guy. You got Baca Mollema, Edward Toynes. Didn't he just get second in Belgian time trial? I think that was
by a wheel toss, the road race against Van Aert.
Okay.
Oh, he might have on the TT as well. I'm not sure.
No, it was a road race.
No, he wasn't on the TT. Yeah, it was the road race.
Yeah.
Wheel toss by Van Aert got him. So he's in good form.
Yeah, he is.
Which is good to see.
Mads Pedersen, former world champ, Tom Squeens, Jasper Stuyven, Nibali, Julian Bernard, Kenny Ellison. So a solid team of everyone you name there. You go, oh, yeah. They could all do something. But what are they going to do?
Well, as it relates to the GC, I think it's going to be really quiet. Like you pointed out, Nibali, shark lost his bite, if we want to use funny analogies. But on the sprints, they can be dangerous. And everyone's been shockingly quiet about Mads Pedersen. He's had a relatively quiet spring, and he hasn't really done much in the last month or so. But ever since he was world champion, he's gotten better and better.
Yeah.
And he quietly gets in the mix on like difficult, muscly sprints. He was second on that horrific stage in Nice last year to open the Tour de France.
Yeah.
He was second on the Champs-Élysées. There are going to be a couple times on these when guys are tired that he's going to absolutely be in the mix. And when he and Stuyven ride together, they actually can be quite effective. So they're between those guys, I definitely see them taking at least a stage.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that because any one of them could surprise you. Squeens could get in a break. Kenny Ellison can climb just well, and you never know. You just never know with Vincenzo Nibali. So, and Baca Mollema. I mean, he makes squeak out a top five. Sometimes he just does that. Team DSM. Yeah,
he was so good. Yeah, Boak was so good in the spring. I mean, I know he's often a strong rider in the spring. He was so good earlier this year that I think they're for their climber guys. Throw him out in a break late. They could.
Right.
Boak Mollema, definitely a guy who can win from a break. I would love to see it. I think they've got options.
He might have too much credibility to allow him to early on be a stage hunter. He'll have to lose time and then go out because otherwise you just don't let Baca Mollema necessarily get up the road. You never know what can happen.
Yeah.
Team DSM, Mark Donovan, Søren Kragh Andersen, Cees Bol, Niels Eikhoff, Casper Pedersen, Tish Benoot, Joris Nieuwenhuis, Josh Sutterlin. So I do not see the powerhouse that we saw last year. But then again, if I were reading the names last year with Sunweb, I would not have known Mark Hershey and some of these others. So
yeah,
I don't know if they've got the mojo. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, last year he was the darling of the whole thing, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. So like Søren Kragh, because he took a couple stages last year.
Yeah.
He's definitely the one that returns that you look at and you're like, okay, he's on similar form. The thing is, when you look at his wins, and I don't mean to say this to discredit his wins, but he was in a smaller selection in the front. There was attack. Everything got responded to except for his attack. And when he attacked, nobody responded. And a lot of that is having the legs to go the distance and carry it to the finale.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is how marked you are as a rider. And he was not a marked rider last year. And so, if that happens again, where he's in those breaks and he goes, is he going to be a marked rider this year where they're like, nope, we've seen this movie before. Don't let this guy go. He actually has the legs to take it to the finish. We got to close this down. Because that's going to be the difference between winning and losing, because he doesn't necessarily have that bunch sprint capability, but he can go from a couple Ks out and take the win.
Yeah, totally with you. So you never know what everyone talked about last year, how they have this team and what, the structure and everything. That's what's causing them to get all these wins. Well, we'll see if they pull that through, if that's really just what it is, or if it was something else. Jumbo-Visma, let's pull this back up here, see if we can see this. Jumbo-Visma, Roglic, Tony Martin, Wout van Aert, Mike Tyneson, Robert Hessink, Jonas Vingegaard, Steven Kruijswijk, and Sepp Kuss. So I think personally that this is one of the strongest GC teams, definitely in the Tour, and definitely I think it's stronger than last year, bringing in Kruijswijk. Now, you had Dumoulin, which was obviously a big deal, but you just look at this. I don't see any real – I mean, they have the guys to bear it on the flats, Mike Tyneson. I mean, Wout could do everything. So what's your take on that?
Stacked. Totally agree. I think a lot of people will look at this team without Tom Dumoulin and think, okay, no Tom Dumoulin, it's a worse team. But to your point, you've got Kruijswijk in there this year, and Vingegaard is awesome. Yeah, absolutely awesome. I mean, he's won stages in his own right. He was amazing for Roglic last year in the Vuelta.
Yes.
So, neither of them, I wouldn't say either of them are better than Dumoulin, but you're taking one away and you're adding two really strong riders there that are absolutely going to add a lot of value. And separately, I'm excited to see Mike Tyneson back. One of the most kind of surprising but exciting moments was when he won stage 1 of 2019, leading out Groenewegen. Groenewegen crashed, and then he just like, all right, screw it, I'll go for it. And he won it over Peter Sagan. It was just such a fun, unexpected thing, and he carried the jersey a couple days. So absolutely stacked team.
Yeah, and so the Jonas edition, as you said, he came through in the Vuelta. The problem that you saw somewhat of last year was the struggle with Dumoulin trying to figure out, am I really riding for GC as kind of a second tier, or am I giving it all to the team? And I don't think he did any disservice to the team, but you can see that kind of play out, and maybe that came about in different ways we don't know. You're not going to see that here. I don't see Kruijswijk, who's been on the podium, I don't see him coming up and going, it's really my chance. He just doesn't seem like that kind of rider. I could be totally wrong. I'm just reading the tea leaves here. But so I see a team that's maybe more solidified around Roglic than ever. Yeah,
I think you're right. And particularly because, and I found this surprising, but last year when Dumoulin sacrificed himself and, he was like, all right, I'm going to take the front, lost a couple minutes. It was kind of in the middle of the second week. Kruijswijk, who, as we know, wasn't in the race, actually made public comments saying, Dumoulin, you shouldn't have done that. And
right.
He shouldn't have, and whether it was like he shouldn't have been asked to do it or he should have done it on his own accord. And for somebody not in the race, that is a relatively controversial comment to make about your own team's tactics. So I have to imagine if he was either wanting split duties or to be option 1A if something was to go wrong with Roglic, because I think there's a fair debate, should it be him or should it be Vingegaard? We might have heard some inklings about that. Unless that comment last year just got absolutely squashed and they did some, internal discussions about things we do and don't discuss. But I think you're right on that one. It's all in for Rog.
Which I could be Kruijswijk's reason for saying that, which is don't take you're going to help him more by staying and trying to fight up front and being that extra guy. Even if you're not going to be there later on, it may just cause some disturbance where if you make a move, they have to watch you as well. Or maybe, I don't know, really, I'm just reading into all these things once again. Into the next team, Ineos Grenadiers. I mean, Thomas, Van Baarle, Rowe, Castroviejo, Kwiatkowski, Port, Gegenhardt, Carapaz. So you have Carapaz. He's won some Giros. Giro was on the podium in the Vuelta. Gegenhardt won the Giro last year. You had Port in the top 3 of the Tour. Kwiatkowski's done everything. Solid team once again with, I assume, Geraint Thomas as the lead. What do you know about that?
Well, I'm curious for your just like litmus take on this. A lot of folks say that there are 4 leaders for Ineos between Gegenhardt, Carapaz, Geraint, and Richie Port. I don't see it that way, but no. How do you interpret it?
Well, no, I think Richie Port made it clear last year that he was not coming here for anything other than to be support. That's why he went over to Ineos. I think he's got his top 3. He's like, I'm out. Now that could change. I don't think Gegenhardt's ridden at all like he was showing last year to be an overall threat. Kwiatkowski is never going to care. He just wants to bury himself till he has to walk. And who else? Van Barl. But because I'm saving Carapaz for last. Carapaz is the outlier. He, to me, is one of the most exciting riders you have out there. His ability to attack. And when he, was it Paris-Nice, where he's attacking in the big green and just over and over. I mean, it was brutal to watch. And to watch him last year in the Vuelta do the same thing, come up short, but still really he, to me, is kind of your next step. And you can see him as maybe a surprise if Geraint Thomas stumbles. So I see two possibles. It depends on where Carapaz is at, because I think he gets his own due, whatever he wants. So I still see it as not a problem.
Yeah. So similarly, don't really believe that there's 4 leaders. I think it's between G and Richie Carapaz. I think in the eyes of the team, G is slightly favored and will get some of the special treatment. And I found it really interesting. I read, and by read I mean I listened to it on Audible, Geraint's book, the Tour According to G, about his 2018 tour.
Okay.
And like that was, Froome, if Froome was going to go for something, like Froome had carte blanche, but G was like the protected rider. But even as the race unfolded, the team was doing, and it became clear that G was the strongest, most likely to win, their best shot at winning the tour. They would still do things that favored Froome. And it was like, one night the hotel had like one air conditioner and they gave it to Froome, and they let him attack on Ventoux, which could have disrupted, G's cadence when he eventually went on to win that stage. So I could see them, for the history of G's time with the program, his history of winning the tour, being Ineos's 1A. We are going to do the little things to support and protect G. But I don't think Richie Carapaz cares one wink about any of that. No. And I think when you get to the stages that really suit him, like that really steep climb in Andorra and then stage 17, they got to send him up the road. Like when he's ready to attack, he's got to go, because that's where that's his chance to win the Tour de France. And if he's got the legs, he's going to go regardless of whether G is in the yellow jersey or not. Even if G is in the yellow jersey, the Ineos team might say, "Hey, Richie, you gotta sit there, and you gotta lead G up this mountain because he's in position to win the tour." I think he'll say, "Screw you guys, I'm gonna go attack because I can win the tour." I would absolutely expect that of him.
So you see a little more strife coming along the road for these two.
I see strife if G is in the yellow jersey or ahead of Carapaz heading into stage 17, but Richie Carapaz is within a minute and a half. I see strife, because he's going to feel that striking distance when he heads into his strongest point of the race, which would be stages 17 and 18.
I totally could see that, and I'm looking forward to that possibility. I will say Geraint Thomas is definitely on a different level than he was last year. And it looks more to me along the lines of his, I don't want to say 2019, but closer to 2019, 2018. So,
yeah. And G had some stumbles along the way. Like he's fallen off his bike twice, which looked super dopey. But even when he did that at the Dauphiné on the last stage, he was able to get back on,
right,
catch back up to Richie Porte, and lead it into the finale. He said there was that really awkward time trial in the Dauphiné too, where like Alexei Lutsenko won,
yeah,
and Astana went 1-2, and a lot of guys like just absolutely mistimed it. I think that was a one-off mistake. I think G's in, like you said, tour shape similar to what he was when he won the tour in 2018 and when he was second in 2019. I think he's right there.
Right. You're not seeing him like when he came into the Tour of Switzerland or Tour de Suisse, going up to the Tour, and he hadn't shown much at all, and he kind of shows some okay. I mean, he's been on close to form this whole time, so it's a different lifestyle.
Totally. And Romandy, when he won Romandy and he went up that final climb with Mike Woods, he would have been neck and neck to win the stage when he popped his hand off in the rain. But like, he's done it in all weather conditions, in all disciplines. He won that long distance 1 kilometer attack. Yeah. Like he's done it all. Like that's a very well-rounded thing for G. And before that win, and he might have had 2 wins if he didn't fall off his bike in Romandy, he hasn't won since Ventoux in the 2018 Tour. So he's showing that he's back in that form.
Yeah. Yeah. Good points. Let's go here to the next team. We'll keep moving along. Team Quebec Assos. Cool. I don't really see much as far as overall. I mean, they have Campenarts. He could he had a decent, what is it, Giro he did there. Sergio Henao, Max Walshed, Sean Bennett, USA. So we got him going in there. Simon Clark, Nicholas Demolay, Mark Goggles, Carlos Barbera.
Yeah, no GC here. Just send him in the break. I mean, Campenaerts absolutely. I mean, he took a stage. Giro, you got to like his odds. If you get him in a break, send Simon Clark as well. Even Michael Gogol as an outside shot. Yeah. But between Campenaerts and Clark, they should just be sending those guys up the road as much as they can.
And I think, Sergio Henao, at least back in the day, you get some climbing going in, maybe a climbing break day. So I could see that with him. Team Movistar, Marc Soler, Valverde, Ivan Garcia, Imanol Iverti, Enric Mas, Carlos Verona, Jorge Arcas, Miguel Angel Lopez. So Lopez, Mas, Valverde, Soler, there's your four-headed monster that you were talking about with, that's the one.
So much fun. I mean, you look at this team and, you think back, you're like, well, how could you can't have more drama. And it's like, oh, you're going to throw Soler back in the mix on this one after the Giro? Like, oh my God, you're absolutely going to have a little bit of drama. But look, I am very impressed with where Miguel Angel Lopez is. He had a very tough off season. He had COVID. He was off the bike for like 6 months, and he was kind of in a bad headspace. He was like, I'm not enjoying the bike. And then he comes back, and he's just crushing it. And like, you can't forget, he won the hardest stage of the Tour de France last year. He won the Ventoux Deneville Challenge a couple weeks ago. Right. And look, they didn't have the stacked lineup that they had last year. Last year, just because of the way racing was with COVID, they had a much deeper lineup there. Right. But still, he won it. It's fresh in his mind. He's going to be going over it twice in 2 weeks from now. So you really got to like his odds to be as good as he was last year in the Tour de France. So I think he probably finishes top for Movistar.
So Superman Lopez is your pick for at least Movistar's assuming he doesn't crash. That's
yeah. If he stays on as long as he doesn't Superman into a sign or off a speed bump on his tri-bike, he's my pick to be the best finisher of Movistar. But I am going to give Movistar a lot of credit. You look at Enric Mas, really slow start to this season. Like, he's done just about nothing. I forget if it was one of the Spanish races. Was it Catalunya? He was in Valencia. He was in position to win Valencia, and then he got a flat in the time trial and lost it, and he was throwing his bike around. He's very upset, which I like to see.
Of course.
But I looked back. He had a horrible lead into his year last year. He did nothing before the Tour de France and then rode himself into fifth on the Planche de Belfi. He finished fifth in the Vuelta. So I was like, okay, look, this is just a Grand Tour guy. This is a Grand Tour GC guy. He needs all 3 weeks, and somehow after 3 weeks, he'll be in the top 10. So I also do expect Enric Mas to show up in the top 10 again as well. And then I'm going to give my floater choice, and I have to do it because I committed to it after he won the stage, the Dauphiné stage. But I'm pegging Alejandro Valverde for 10th place.
Oh, wow. Well, of course you would. Not because of anything. I mean, it's just not a bad pick. I'm really going with Enric Mas as their top, I think, above and beyond. The problem you have with Lopez is he's got some ups and downs. Mas, his progression, you saw it in the Tour, you saw it in the Vuelta, you saw it in the Vuelta a few years before that as well. When he was with Quick-Step, he just gets better and better and better, and I think he has that ability, and he shows a lot of teeth when he's really hurting. I don't know if you've seen that smile, but he's all teeth. All right.
Look, that's right. Because look, he stinks in these stage races. He can't do a week-long stage race. He doesn't have time to put it together. You're spot on. He needs all 3 weeks.
Right.
He needs all 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's the way to put it. Team Bike Exchange. I mean, I hope for these guys all the time. You've got Chavez, Joel Jensen, Simon Yates, Lucas Hamilton, Luke Durbridge, Amon Janssen, Michael Matthews, Luka Medchik. Solid team there, but who's going to be? Are you going to finally see Chavez or Yates coming through, or is it Lucas Hamilton's turn?
This is a wonky one because, I mean, Lucas Hamilton, I'd say let him ride however he wants to ride and go for GC, because I think a lot of us got excited about Esteban Chavez. Yeah. He said he was in shape to win the Tour. He had some great races. He was second on that in Catalunya, second on the Volta 2000 stage to I think it was Adam Yates. He won the mountain stage the next day, and you're like, oh my God, this guy's going great.
Right. He's back.
But then he's kind of stunk. He did not look good in the Tour de Suisse. He launched an early attack on the penultimate day, didn't work out. 10th overall in GC at the Tour de Suisse. Like, that's just not the trajectory, of somebody who's gonna place well into the top 10. So big question mark there. And then Simon also, look, third in the GC at the Giro, but like coming back off the Giro is always really difficult, and you don't pay for that until the third week. But I don't think you want to place your bet there and risk Hamilton if Simon Yates might not have good legs in the final week. So I don't know.
I mean, that Giro, sorry to go back to that. That was such an interesting how the last few, top 3-4 guys there you could throw Almeida as one of those, but Yates, Almeida, who was second place? Damiano Caruso and Bernal. They're all like crushing at different points. In the end, and then kind of having some suffer days as well. And Yates, I was fully expecting him to come in. You saw Bernal suffering, and then he was coming up, and you expected that, and it just didn't come through. Always looking for him to finally break through on one of these, but besides the Vuelta, but we'll see.
I think Yates hates the rain. He stunk on all the bad weather days in the Giro, and then when the weather cleared up in the final week, he was great. Except for the only stage in the last week that he wasn't that great on was in Cortina, which was raining. So look, if the sun's out, guns out for Simon Yates.
All right, let's cruise along here. I won't belabor everybody here. Lotto Soudal, obviously the Caleb Ewan show. I don't see much other than that. It looks like all in for him. What do you think?
Yep, 100%. Question is, do you think he finishes the Tour? His goal is to win in all 3 Grand Tours this year. Do you think he finishes?
No, if that's his goal, when we saw what Von 2 could do. So I don't know.
Okay.
All right.
I'll bet yes.
Okay.
But I think this is the only Grand Tour. I think it's the only Grand Tour he will finish this year.
Okay.
I think he will drop out of the Vuelta after he takes his stages.
Israel Startup Nation, it looks like they're going in for Woods here. A decent team with climbers of Martin, Froome maybe? My question with Froome is, and I think bringing Froome is actually can be a plus. You saw if he's dedicated to Woods, he would be a superb road captain and giving some great insights along the road there. Evidently, he did a lot of good work with. I'm trying to remember what was the gentleman he rode with Ineos last year. He was. He came back from doing triathlons. He's an Australian guy. Anyway, there was an interview with him after the Vuelta, said that Froome changed his mindset to being a worker, and he was really impressed with kind of the change and transformation he did in the Vuelta last year. So if he's got that mindset, I think it would be a quality to have him there alongside Woods, or a shit show.
Yeah, I had a good Cameron Worth.
Yes, there you go. Thank you.
The Ineos guy. Yeah. Look, when we were talking at the beginning of the season, I went back to when we did our spring show and I looked, what were the crazy bets that we made? Because I know we were wrong on most of them. And one of them was, will Israel Startup Nation place somebody on the podium at a Grand Tour? And at that time, we're thinking maybe it's Froome. It was like, maybe they will. And if they do, it's Dan Martin or Chris Froome. Little did we know or ever imagine that would be Mike Woods going for GC. Right. So, look, the guy's awesome. He can't time trial to save his life, but he's been absolutely climbing with the best of them in all conditions. And I'm gonna chalk him up. I'm gonna ride this bet. I said he'd have a big season. I think he's continuing to show it, and I'd like to see him. And I do think he has a shot and will place in the top 10. But that's the only result. Send Dan Martin up the road, try to steal another stage, just like he did in the Giro, and that's pretty much all we're all gonna see out of them. We'll probably see Froome in like 2 breakaways, but I don't think he's got the legs to finish it this year.
No, I did see Flow Bikes had a little interview with Mike Woods, and he said he's really improved his time trial. And he's like, I just did a time trial, I got 30th. He's like, I've never broken the top 50. He goes, I know that sucks, but for me at least it shows improvement. I'm like, okay, you're taking the Chavez everything's a rosy approach, which is just fine. One of the other things we talked about was, would Froome win a stage or a race before Cavendish? And we were both like, oh, no brainer. And then Cavendish comes out with like a bunch of wins.
We were so wrong on that one.
Right.
So wrong.
Groupama FDJ. The one I'm most excited to see there is David Gadu. I think he's kind of an up and comer. No Pinot. So what's happening with them?
It's the changing of the guard. That's it. No, the straight swap Pinot for David Gadu. And the question is, how high do you think David Gadu can place in the GC?
Definitely a top 10 without problem, but getting this top 7 is going to be tough unless people will get injured with who we have going in this race.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to get up well into the top 10. I think he's going to be right around the rim on the top 10.
With two flattish time trials, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, he's not strong enough there. And it's kind of a bummer that, look, I love seeing Arnaud Démare here. Coming into this season after what he did at the Giro last year, one of my big bets was like Arnaud Démare could take the green jersey. Looks even better for him now that Sam Bennett's not in it. So I think it's going to be really tight between Démare, Peter Sagan, and I think Sonny Cabrelli now has a decent shot at this, just the way that Bahrain and he himself are riding, coming off winning the Italian road race last week.
Yeah.
He's definitely got a shot to get in the mix, but it's a split train. So like David Gadu isn't properly protected to like really protect him into a solid top 10 spot. And then Démare doesn't have his full train. So they're running themselves a little bit thin.
Agree. EF Education starts out. We got our American in there for me, local Nelson Palace. Looks like they're going to be running with Rigoberto Urán, but they have a solid team. Guerrero's, had a good Giro last year, a good one this year.
Mm-hmm.
Stefan Bessinger winning time trials, and I'm thinking the reason you bring him in is to try to get one of these time trial wins for your team. There, it kind of sparks everything off. Jonathan Roush, Sergio Higuita, Magnus Curt, Michael Valgren. Solid team of. I don't know if Rigoberto really gets into the top and he's riding like he did a few years ago. You don't really have the team to support him there on the climbs. But then again, he's kind of the guy that just hides and buries himself behind the big trains and doesn't really need that. So I think they're not too bad. Probably some stage wins.
Yeah, very defensive. Yeah, for Rigo, solid defensive riding. That's his how he rolls. Definitely see him in the top 10. Totally agree on Biesiger. Look, you got no Filippo Ganna, you got no Rohan Dennis. Flat, powerful time trials behind Stefan Kung, Wout van Aert. He's probably the next big bet. So definitely can get on the podium of those two stages and definitely has an outside shot to potentially steal one.
All right, DeQuani Quick Step. We know about Alaphilippe. Will he ever be a GC guy at a tour as far as like threaten the overall past stage 18 or 19? I don't know. He's there. He's going to probably win some stages. But then it looks like it's all set up for Cavendish. Ballerini, Asgreen, Catano, Devenins, Morkov, de Klerk. I mean, rollers on the midfield and big punchers on the sprints. So,
yeah.
Look,
Michael Morkov at the end of the day is the best in the business. So, look, Cavendish is going to be delivered. And it's just going to be a matter if he can finish. We came into this season saying like no chance Cavendish wins, but look, on this parcours, they say there's 8 sprint stages. I think he's got a shot at 7 of them, and I hope, and I'm going to bet that he snags one. And it'll be my 3rd emergency podcast for Mark Cavendish this season, if and when it happens. But I'd be absolutely delighted to see it. What do you think?
No,
are we going to both reverse our bets?
I was critical of his wins. At the when did he come out and had like 4 or 5 wins there in a row? You know, that one stage race.
Tour of Turkey.
Thank you, because it was the Tour of Turkey and who he was going against. And then there, some arguments either way. But I'm like, a win's a win, so I should probably just let it go. And then he keeps winning. So there you go. I have nothing to say.
Let me just read the top 10 from the stage he won at the Belgian Tour. This is the result of the final stage. Cavendish, Merlier, Ackerman, Groenewegen, Buhani, Brian Cocard, Skip 2, and Caleb Ewan.
Yeah, okay.
That's real sprinters.
No, once again, I said Tour of Turkey, and then he comes out after, and I've really got nothing to say anymore. So wait,
what's your bet? Is he going to win?
Cavendish will, if he's in the Tour, he will find a way to win. I remember, a few years ago when he was with Quebeca, and they're like, "Oh, he's got nothing," and he pulls out 5 wins or something. So, he's quite amazing like that. But you've got decent sprinters coming in here, so you never know. Cofidis, do we have much? I mean, Jesus Hirata, he can climb okay. Christophe Laporte, Guillaume Martin, he's probably the only one. He's probably going to go try to get his top 12 again.
Yeah, that's his claim to fame. Last year, he looked really strong in the preseason. I had him well inside the top 10. He didn't get there. I think he finished 12th again, so just left it there. I don't see him improving on that with the field that we have here. I see him outside the top 10. I think their best shot at a result is Christophe Laporte. Has the capability to finish top 3 in a stage, but that's probably about it. I don't know if he can snag a win.
Bora Hansgrohe, Peter Sagan, obviously for the green jersey, and then what is it? Wilco Kelderman, is that, or Emmanuel Bachmann, Patrick Conrad? Who's their big GC guy?
They've defined Wilco as their GC guy after his 4th place at the Dauphiné. I don't really love it. Even though Emmanuel Buchmann crashed out of the Giro, I think he's the better overall rider. I mean, he was fourth at the Tour a couple of years ago. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we see kind of like what happened with DSM at the Giro, where they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna back what's his face who got second last year, and Bardet's gonna work for him, and then Bardet ends up Jai Hindley, and then Bardet ends up being better than him. I could see that happening between these two, where they're like, oh, we're gonna back Wilco, but then by the end of it, so long as Bookman's in good form, that he actually ends up placing higher.
And you know what, they can do that because they are kind of the best hope to be like a top 5. So, you know, you just kind of, you're not going to necessarily having to support each other. You're just kind of like hanging on defensively, kind of like the Rigoberto ran type thing.
Totally. Yeah, they're both sitting. And the only other thing on Bora was there was a surprising amount of drama about Ackerman not being selected to the Tour.
Yeah.
And I was just surprised to see that because it's kind of a no-brainer. Ackerman hasn't won this year. I don't think he's even got a second place, maybe 1 second place. He's barely squeaking top 3s. Sagan, unlike last year, has 4 wins under his belt. He's looking closer to 2019 form. Maybe probably still not exactly there, but better on a relative basis than he was last year. And he's trending up and Ackerman's trending down. So I don't see how anybody would have ever put them on the same team. It's kind of like the DeCoinick debate. Oh, is it Sam Bennett and Cavendish? No, you can't have both. You just got to take the better of the two. And that is still Peter Sagan.
Is Bennett injured? Is that the reason he wasn't picked?
Oh my God. I've heard everything about it, right? So he had a small knee injury that slightly impacted his training, and he said while he's okay, he didn't have the training in his legs to perform at his best. So we've heard everything. Okay, it is an injury. Lefevre's like, he's just weak-minded, and it's in his head, and so he's chickening out. I'm paraphrasing, but I guess we don't know. We won't really know. All I do know is that imagine if Bennett did go to the Tour, they left Cavendish home, and then Bennett dropped out with an injury, right. And DeCoinick sitting there with no sprinter and Cavendish on the couch on the Isle of Man. The people would be very upset about that.
The people, yes, I agree. Bahrain victorious does not bring Padun. I don't know if he gained too much weight from the last stage wins he had there, doubles. But they bring Dylan Teuns, Pello Bilbao, Fred Wright, Matteo Moric, Wout Poels, Jack Haig, Marco Heiler, Sonny Cabrelli. Sonny Cabrelli, like you said, winning some stages recently. Italian champion, I take it. Is that what you said?
Yep, exactly.
Pello Bilbao is kind of my new favorite, the way he climbs, going serpentine up to climbs. But no Padun. What do you think of not bringing him on the race?
Horrible mistake. Absolutely horrible mistake. Him and Gino Mader, both like revelations of this year. And it's like, how could you, they were set up to be like DSM last year, where like people like Padun, who nobody ever heard of, he won the 2 hardest stages of the Dauphiné. Are you kidding me? Like, who won stage of the Dauphiné last year? Oh, Danny Martinez. Well, then he won a stage. It's like, oh, Sepp Kuss. Everyone knows that guy. Davide Formolo. Everyone knows that guy. So how do you not run this guy at the Tour de France? And like then, so people said like, oh, well, it wasn't part of his training plan. This, that, the other thing. It's like, look, you don't have Mikel Landa. Just send him. Like, what are you doing? Right. It's a no-brainer for me that Padun and Bader should both be here. Would have been absolute fan favorites. They've got chances with these guys. It's still a good team, but a huge mistake as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and you look at Padun's win when he dropped Sepp, which was, first of all, impressive. I think, climbing top to bottom, he was still, because I think, was he in the break? I'm trying to remember that, but it was one of those days where, his time, he did not lose to the guys chasing behind. He was putting it in, so.
Yeah, on the last day where it was the 2 climbs, when he didn't lose any time from when he summited the penultimate climb to essentially to the finish line. And he did that whole bit solo.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Remarkable. Very remarkable.
Very good. So bummed about both of those guys. And Mader, maybe had a chance to pip Roglic back. So we got Astana here. Guzdev, Lutsenko, Aranburu, Houllier, De Boed, Izagiri, Fraley, and Fuglsang. Who's going for overall there? Or are they even doing it?
I hope nobody.
Yeah,
I hope nobody.
I don't see.
Because go for stages. Lutsenko took one last year. I love Fuglsang. I would just love to see him. I don't. What do you want to do? See him like snag a 10th, maybe? Go win a stage.
Well, didn't he say last year that he's done going for the GC? I think he announced that last year. He's like, I'm not doing GC stuff anymore.
Probably after his Giro performance last year, he's like, all right, I'm done with this.
Right. And then AG2R, Ben O'Connor, Oliver Nason, Who else do we have? Michael Sharp, Greg Van Avermaet, Nans Peters, who got a stage win last year, Bennett Koisafoy. Van Avermaet, I mean, he's getting a little long in the tooth. Still maybe some chances there, but maybe Ben O'Connor is going to be their guy this year.
He is their guy. They said he's our GC guy. This has got to be really awkward for the fans of AG2R. I mean, this is like a super French team, and they've got an Australian coming in replacing Romain Bardet, who's been their steadfast GC guy for nearly the last decade. It's like, oh, this Aussie guy's in here being our GC hopeful. It's just got to be a little bit weird. But yeah, Ben O'Connor's solid. He's definitely got potential. It's probably, if he is just really riding GC, he's probably going to be a little bit boring to watch. So hopefully they send some other guys in the break. It'd be great to see Van Avermaet just get out in as many breaks as he could and hopefully pull one more off before he kind of moves into his swan song of his career.
Right. So we've gone through the teams. We've broken all those down for everybody. Now, what are your predictions for a few categories here? You've got, how about the green jersey? What do you think of there?
Oh, I flip-flop. I started the season saying Arnaud Demar, and he didn't come in with a lot of momentum, but he did just take a couple stages at lower-ranked pro race. And so I guess I'm going to be a little controversial. I'm going to say Arnaud Demar. I'm going to say Arnaud Demar finds a way to win the green jersey over Peter Sagan and Sonny Colbrelli third.
See, I think Sonny Colbrelli really has a chance. I mean, he's...
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he's been really impressive. Now, just getting to the finish might be an issue of these sprinters getting through, but we've seen, you always look at the climbs and like, how does anybody do this? And then they get there. So I'm still sticking with Peter Sagan, but I think you're going to see, and totally depends on what plays out on the road. But I think Sonny Colbrelli is going to be my next best chance. And I'm sure by stage 2, they'll be out and I'll be wrong. So.
No, he's solid. Look, that's a solid pick. Sonny Colbrelli is going to surprise a lot of people on the roads just based on what he's doing. I mean, if you looked at his results he had 3 second places and a win at the Dauphiné. I mean, he was all over the roads, and not just against sprinters, but against punchers as well. So he's riding extraordinarily well.
Which sprinter is going to win the most stages?
Caleb Ewan.
Caleb Ewan. Okay. I'm down with that. Is Peter Sagan going to win a stage?
No.
Okay.
He's won green without winning a stage.
Right. Is Wout going to win a stage?
Yes.
Okay. But
it may well be the time trial because he is on paper on that parcours probably the best. It's most similar to what we saw in Imola. Imola was 35-kilometer pancake flat on the race course. Yeah. He was second. He beat Kung there. We've got no Ghana. I think technically on paper would be the favorite. So I'm going to say yes to that. His other 2 shots are probably stages 1 and 2, but I don't know. He'd be cannibalizing Roglic's bonus points if he was to win over Roglic on like the stage 2 with the steeper pincher at the end. So I'm going to say yes, but probably not a road stage.
Top American. First of all, will an American win a stage?
Oh, I don't think so.
I think you're right. I think Nilson Palace has a good chance. He gets in the breaks and he does this, and then something just flops. So we're hoping for him though.
Well, last year was his first year out there, and he was so much fun to watch. And he's got a little bit more experience under his belt, and they don't necessarily need him to protect Uran because by the time, where Uran needs the help, Palace may well have been dropped already. So his best bet, he could get out there and hunt stages. And I think they could give him a leash to do so, just like they sent him up the road last year a couple times, even though Uran was well into the top 10. So I think he's probably got one of the best shots to do it.
I agree. So who's your pick for GC? What are we going to come right out here and just throw it out?
Back-to-back Tadej Pogačar over Roglic.
How close is this going to be?
It's going to be tight. I mean, inside 2 minutes for sure. And maybe 90 seconds. It's going to come down to the gaps on the time trial, I think. I mean, other than that, you're not going to see much besides the time bonuses unless something like catastrophic happens on the road or like, a big shakeup on the crosswinds or something like that. I think it's going to be a relatively tight tour.
Who is going to be the biggest surprise this year? What's your prediction for that in a positive way?
Ooh. Well, I think from a team perspective, for anybody who's only loosely been following cycling, we've just seen so much from Bahrain that any results that they put up will continue to impress. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that we were looking at Bahrain and joking about how they had the term victorious in their name, and now they're just absolutely lighting up the world tour. So I think from a team perspective, it's going to be Bahrain. I think from an individual perspective, in the GC, it's going to be Mike Woods, because I don't think anybody would have expected Mike Woods to be in the top 10, and I think he will be top 10 in the GC.
Yeah, I am actually would not be shocked. He's made progression. Won stages obviously of the Vuelta. He's been up there, World Championships, so we can see it. But I've seen him better and better on some of the 1 week stage races type. So he's definitely improved himself, and so we'll see how it goes. Biggest disappointment, do you think? What's your biggest flop prediction?
Ooh. I've got a lot of snubs. I think a lot of guys who teams are banking on having in the top 10 are not going to make it. But in terms of biggest flop, I see a lot of risk of David Gadu making the top 10. I think he's going to be around the hoop, but I think he's actually going to finish just outside, unfortunately. Not that I want to see it. And I think that'll be really disappointing. So if you look at the entirety of the base of cycling, I think that would probably be one of the most disappointing ones, to not see him as the replacement for Pinot not finish in the top 10.
I'm picking, and he was my green jersey winner, Sagan. He's also going to be the biggest flop potential. Ooh. So I think there's a good chance that he doesn't even, get on a podium and just flops out. So that's kind of my prediction there. But as far as overall, I think Roglic is going to end up taking it this year. He's taken just a prediction. He's taking a different approach going in. Last year was just different in general, but he's been taking a bunch more time off. And I think his time trial is going to come in a little bit sharper than last year. And that could be the big thing for him. Other than that, really don't have much for the overall. Tade will be up there. I think you're going to see a Carapaz in the top 3 instead of a G. Thomas. And Iran will be the top 5 or top 50. I'm not sure which one.
So it sounds like you also agree that Ineos is going to kind of go into the race, at least mentally, with G as their 1A over Carapaz, but you think Carapaz will end up being better than G on the overall GC?
There's something about Carapaz's mentality and the way he races that he will barnstorm this thing at some point. I mean, you saw that in the Giro, right? When he came in with Landa.
Totally.
And he just took off and solos out. And, did you ever watch the Movie Star documentary thing on Netflix?
Yeah, I did.
That was fascinating to see such a mental breakdown from the prologue that Landa had, and he could not recover, it seemed like to me. I mean, he ends up, 4th? But just mentally was just shit the bed with Carapaz. And anyway, I think you're going to see a similar thing with Carapaz this time. Just he's going to overtake the race.
He's a bold-faced killer. He's a real competitor, and he's tenacious and relentless. So yeah, I agree. He's going to absolutely light it up, and it's going to be really interesting when we get. If it's going to be fascinating if G is leading ahead of him when you get to some of those Queen-esque stages like Andorra and 17 and 18, because he's going to go for it. He's going to take his shot at glory.
Yeah. Anything else you want to throw in before I think we got a nice hour and a half here.
No, I think that's it. It's going to be fun. This is what we wait for all year. So look forward to enjoying it.
And this is why I don't like the Champs-Élysées race itself. The race is over. I'm disappointed. I want to see a fireball happen and want champagne in the mix. I don't know.
I know. We got so blessed last year. It's like got to sit at home and watch it. Now we're going back to the office a little bit more. It's we really got spoiled in the last year. So yeah, the Tour de France hangover is real.
That it is. Well, Rob, I appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find you and follow you and about your podcast.
Oh, yeah. Check it out. Tour Breakaway. You can find it on, we got the Instagram at Tour Breakaway. This year I started a YouTube channel. So just like Tyler posts, you see me on the YouTube and anywhere else you get your podcasts. And
I will say this. I've been really busy, so this probably should never do this, but Rob's usually posting more quality and more timely info out there. So definitely check his show out, especially during the Tour de France, because he'll probably come on in the morning right after the race, and he'll give you this breakdown of something that happened. So it's a good quality. Rob, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you've been riding your bike, and so enjoy yourself out in the Northwest. For those who want to stalk him, that's where he'll be.
Thank you, Tyler. Good being on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Take care, everybody. Between Two Wheels podcast. Share the show, everybody. We love you. Bye.